All right, everybody, welcome to the live stream. This is Cocktails, Code, and Conversation, also known as C3 Live, coming at you on this wonderful Thursday. It's 2 p.m. Central, it's 3 p.m. Eastern, it's 12 noon, it's 1 o'clock Mountain. I don't know the rest of the time zones, but it is 5 o'clock somewhere. So, of course, we're going to have a cocktail and a conversation. And today, this episode is brought to you by SecureITSource. They have sponsored this talk today, and I'm super excited to talk with them and special guest Jonathan Edwards.
Hey, good to be here, David. Good to see you again.
And we're going to be talking about monetizing identity and access management, and really just kind of shifting the focus of how people look at their identity and access management programs and some of the things that they can do. So, with that, without further ado, let's get it started. Jonathan, go ahead and introduce yourself to everybody.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Jonathan Edwards. I'm the Senior Director of IAM Strategy over at SecureITSource. I've been in identity for, it seems like forever now, like everybody else probably on this as well. We're a professional services organization that's focused only in identity. We don't have any other revenue streams outside of that, so we're really hyper-focused in that space. So we really like to say that we help organizations strategize, design, and implement successful identity programs.
Awesome. It's fantastic. And I always like to kind of start off and ask people this question, like, how did you get into identity?
By mistake, like everybody else. Right? So I was working for a company that was focused in ITSM at the time, and so doing things like ServiceNow, Remedy, and was managing a team. And the company decided to get into the security space, and we had two different practices at the same time, and they kind of became conflicting, as I'm sure we'll talk about at some point, where the ITIL and the access management cross, and there's always arguments around what approach to have. But anyway, so there was two sides of the house, and I had to make a decision. I looked at the future, and security was just super exciting to me, and it really changes the way organizations function. And it's just a lot of fun, right? You get to learn a lot of different things about organizations. So I kind of fell into it. I started managing a team there as well, and the rest is history, as I say.
All right, awesome. Yeah, it's especially in identity when it comes to security, right? I've not met one person yet, and I think at some point we'll find him as like this kind of newer wave or this newer generation of identity practitioners comes in. I've not yet one person that's like, oh yeah, I started out because I want to do identity. I want to learn everything about authentication, right? It's just always like I was working on something and nobody else could figure it out, and I started looking at it, and next thing I know, I was the man or the woman answering all the questions, and then 20 years later, I'm still here. Right?
Well, it's kind of used to be the whole, like, don't ever let someone watch you fix a printer or a copier, right?
Right.
You become that person, and that's kind of how identity was as well.
You become the person, right? It's like, hey, Jonathan, my printer's not working again. It's like, that's nice, but why do you think I fix printers?
Yeah.
So jumping right into this topic, right? This was, when we first linked up and kind of talked about this, I got super excited because this is something that for a couple of years, not necessarily to the specific points that we're going to get to here, but just I've been wanting people to change the way they look at identity. And what I didn't like was that we started doing the same pitches all the time, right? It's like, oh, cost savings and efficiency, and here's all the stuff that can save you money, which again, it does those things, and those things are important. But especially in business, right? We all know that, you're going to spend as little as you can for something that you feel like that costs you money, right? If it's a cost that you can't put it to something, you're just gonna like, all right, well, what's the cheapest that I can get this done? And that's just really, if you think about it, it's human nature. We do that in personal lives, right? When you're shopping for insurance, stuff like that, you're like, all right, I want to get the value, but then again, like I want to pay a super amount of money. Like you set aside already a budget that you want to pay for it, versus if something's going to bring you in revenue, right? If your VP of sales comes and say, look, I got a way for us to increase our pipeline by 300%, you're not going to ask, well, how much does it cost? You're going to be like, do it.
Right.
What do we need to do? And so that's one of the things that I had been looking at and really talking to people about, is like, how can we start to shift that? So, tell me a little bit about your thoughts on that when you start looking and saying, like, hey, let's see how we can monetize identity access management.
Yeah. So, a couple points on that. Number one is, I think organizations really need to start thinking about, how everything that they do needs to be in service of driving revenue, right? And if you just look and you just go back in time where IT was always a money pit, right? People just threw money at it. Nobody likes, like, these guys in the basement, why are we giving them all this money to do stuff? And until they actually realized, hey, I'm supporting services for the business, that's when budgets came, and that's when people started spending money. And identity is the same thing right now, right? It's hard to sell because you're selling insurance, like you mentioned. It's, hey, what happens if? And, let's be honest, vendors are out there and they're saying, hey, if you don't do this, meet this compliance, this is how you're going to fail and you're going to spend all this money. And it becomes an ROI conversation, right? And that's not sexy, right? It's you want to be able to bring more revenue into the business. So how do we change that conversation, and how do we start looking at what am I doing to bring more revenue to the company?
Right. And it's, I think it's especially important in today's environment of how we develop applications, right? I've always looked at identity as it's had this, symbiotic relationship with app development, because if you're a big organization, you're developing your own apps, you're putting things out there, right? Part of the problems that when identity first started kind of really taking off is that you're solving is that you had all these applications, and what happened? All these app teams went out and did the exact same thing over and over again, like 5 different ways, right? It's like, oh, well, we needed a user source, so this app team used a directory, but this app team used a database, and this app team used that, or whatever. And so you just didn't see any commonality there, right? And so those were one of the things where we could really get those wins and start consolidating and helping those app teams, like, hey, here's less stuff you have to worry about. Like, you want to go launch a new app, like, no, don't worry. Like, we've got your authentication, and we've got these things, and your user management, and those things. So as we've watched application development evolve, like, over the last 10 years to now, where it's it's crazy to me, coming up as an app developer back in the tail end of the waterfall days, right? Like, your company's doing, like, we do 300 deployments a day, right? It's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy. First of all, I'm asking, like, okay, if you do 300 deployments a day, is that a feature? Or did you just miss something? Like, what part of the design says, oh yeah, we're going to ship this, and then 300 changes later, we're going to fix it? But anyway, that's a different discussion. But the speed at which people develop now, right? And so the speed at which things are happening, like, you have to be able to, move fast to keep up with these developers, to give them not only the space that they need to go develop and do what they want to do, but still be, secure. Yeah. So I think that's where we can really start making that push, start looking at what we do for an identity different. Like, hey, this enables some of those things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you look at customer identity specifically, it's a really good story, because when you go back, when SIAM, what's called SIAM, when that first started, it was really around things like Salesforce. Let me just capture data so that I can market to people, right? Yeah. And that was really it. And then it became, these solutions, I won't name them, but solutions that came out and built identity programs that are for workforce, that they tried to kind of shove in that whole customer mentality. But now what's happening is it's developers that are driving identity, right? I need to be able to produce these services at a faster rate. So how do I do that? I build off standards like OpenID Connect, right? I have one identity store, like you mentioned. I unify things so that I no longer have to develop all those user stores and all those security policies. All I worry about is development now, and that's it. So now, if I always use this example, if I have a credit card service that took me 6 months to build, I can now build that in 3 months, which means that now I have more time, or a faster time, to that revenue that I didn't have before. Right. So that's how we have to think about things: is how can I speed up these things so that I can get that revenue faster?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And it was, the first time that I heard somebody else, really kind of talking about this kind of mindset shift was Richard Bird. It was a couple of years ago. We were at an event, and he was talking about, like, this kind of like this chargeback model, right? How, like, identity teams can start, like, basically, charging the organization for different ways that they integrate. It's like, hey, if you choose to integrate, in your own custom way, sure, then I'm gonna charge you more for the services from an internal standpoint. However, if you agree to, align to the standards and best practices that we're using and allow us to kind of onset some of that for you, your charge is a little is smaller. Is less. And so I thought that was, like, first of all, just interesting, a way to, again, get the identity teams, really get the security teams back into these conversations of around revenue. Because let's be honest, right? At the end of the day, right, at at the executive levels, right, when they're talking and making these decisions, the decisions are being made on what's revenue generating, right? Like, hey, like even let's say you're not public yet, but it's like, hey, like what are we doing to increase our numbers this year? So we're going to spend the most time around that, right? That's to say that they're not going to give time to the security things and the things that they have to do that aren't revenue generating, but that's what comes to mind. That's where the focus comes. And so if we can shifting those conversations and shifting, how we're deploying and doing things from an identity and a security perspective, now we start to get into those conversations. Right now it's like, hey, so what can hey CISO, hey VP of IT, like what can we do from a security perspective, identity perspective, to help us hit this number this quarter, right? Oh well, like here's the thing.
Well, I think part of the problem is organizations aren't tying CISOs or CTOs to revenue, right? They're technologists, and that's how they see them.
Yeah.
So I think there needs to be a mindset, not only in the infrastructure that organizations are building, right, moving towards agile approaches, whether they're SaaS, microservices, those type of things, but the organization needs to have a different mentality and say, listen, we're all business, right? We're not just technologists. We're not just HR. We're not just whatever. We're all working together to drive that. So that it's really that top down of it. I mean, listen, everybody says, why do identity projects fail? It's always because there's no buy-in from the top.
Right.
It's the same thing for everything. So there needs to be that mind change across the organization that comes from the top.
Right. And I think, this is one of those areas where we as, practitioners, we can improve and get better, right? One of the things that I talk about a lot is that, when it comes to specifically identity, and this could be the case of any projects, but, identity is my background, my expertise. Like, what makes it so challenging, it's not because it's not just a technical project, right? It's business process, it's program management, it's all these things kind of coming together, and that's what really helps to drive successful projects. And we, from a technical standpoint, practitioners have dove in, and so we want to understand all the standards, we want to understand all the bits, and I get it, right? We love to geek out about that stuff, and it's like, oh, dude, look what I did with the latest, new OAuth 2 flow, and I'm able to do this, and what's going on with this standard? Like, we really want to geek out about that, and that's awesome. But if we're not explaining, if we're not working on crafting the story to the business better, right? They get it now. They understand the need for identity and governance and these things and authentication, authorization. So they get that, right? I think we tell that story down pat.
Sure.
I think what we're talking about today is that next evolution of that story. Like, okay, customer, you get it. You understand that this is important, and here's how I can help protect and keep you from a lot of headlines, right? So you got that part. Now let's start looking at this and saying, like, how does this help make us a differentiator, right? How are we now different than our competitors because we do identity really well, right? Yeah. So we can develop apps, this much faster. One of the subjects that you brought up in the white paper that you wrote is about M&A. So talk about that a little bit, right? Like where, because there's a lot of companies, and I didn't realize this until the last couple of years, like that's their whole thing. It's just M&A. Like they just go out and buy companies. Like that's their complete MO. It's like, oh, we're going to grow. We're going to go buy these 3 companies. So is there talk a little bit about that, about some areas there where you saw that could actually be a benefit? Yeah.
And that's super important in today's world, right? Because let's be honest, there's companies that are struggling right now. And there's the other companies are out there saying, hey, you know what? Now's a really good time to buy them. Right. So how do I bring those companies into the fold much faster? Right. It's about, again, like I mentioned, building those standards and repeatable processes so that I can bring those organizations in, say, here's the standards that we adhere to, right? Bring them into the fold. And now those services that you have built for your organization are easily to be implemented in the new organization that you brought in. Right. Another aspect that I don't think many people talk about is divestiture, right? The time it takes to offboard a company is very costly, right? And if I'm able to easily take a company out of the fold, I've now saved myself potentially millions of dollars. And going back to the cost of M&A, they say it's about like 1 to 5% of the overall cost of that deal is what it costs to actually migrate a company into the fold, right? And most of that cost is around IT. Right. So if I'm able to propagate services easier and faster, I can reduce that cost drastically, right? And it's a hard thing for organizations to understand because they struggle with M&A, right? So they're always trying to clean up data. Now you got to meet my data. So there's solutions out there that allow you to easily transform data to without having to bring domains together to be able to integrate. And that's where, SaaS is a big player there, right? It allows you to connect to domains that aren't necessarily trusted, but you're able to communicate and do everything you want to do on an identity perspective.
Right. And that's where, one of my favorite rant topics comes up, is where I think it's so important to have, getting towards that unified identity store. But even under that, like understanding your identity architecture, like what makes up your identity, right? So understanding your data attributes, understanding your unique identifiers, right? Having a strong, solid design around there, makes that so much easier. So it's like, hey, I'm going to do an M&A and I got these two directors I want to bring in and
Right.
this and got all this data. It's like, okay, well, I understand my flow, right? And here's my identity blueprint and how that architects. So now it's like, okay, we can just translate that in, right?
Yeah.
So now I want to bring this in. And so here's the things that we're looking for. We need to have these attributes, this, whatever. And to your point, there's tools, there's translation tools there that'll help you get there. I always throw out virtual directories because to me that it's the best like Swiss Army knife of an identity practitioner. Like I don't. If I needed like a senior architect who's been doing it a while and I was like, and they've never used a virtual directory, I'm like, or never even heard of one, I'm like, dude, like what's going on? Because I'm like, it is so easy to kind of go in there and put together the views and data of how you want it. But the main thing I looked at is having that solid identity blueprint and architecture, right? So knowing where my attributes are, it just goes a huge way once you want to start integrating with other applications. Or in this case, I got to bring on a whole new identity store, right? And whether or not I'm doing M&A, you brought up, customer identity access management. One of the things that I saw a lot over the past years is really customers starting to, question that should it be one source for both workforce and customers, or should it be two separate ones?
Yeah.
Right? And I want to say about 4 years ago, the conversation was kind of coming up and it was like, whatever. But here so recently, man, it's really becoming a bigger conversation, for some of these customers. And I'll be honest, I'm on the fence.
Sure.
I think it should be separate, right? Just because as I'm watching the other side on customer identity access management, all the legislation, all the things that are coming up, what you have to do around customer data, right? You don't really have to do any of that with workforce data. Like as an employee, I don't have a choice. Like I'm just given an identity and here's the attributes and I don't control any of that, right? The customer is completely different. So very interesting to see that coming together. But like, pulling some of those features from like SIAM and things you have to worry about where it's like, look, I want rapid onboarding. I want a better experience as I bring, these identities on, can be applied to the workforce to making this easier, faster, right? Which again leads to better experiences, which I think ultimately, does give you that advantage that you can start to saying, okay, like this is stuff that we can turn in and make it revenue generating. So
yeah. Well, we finally found something we disagree on.
All right.
Yeah.
Disagree. Okay.
I'm in the camp where, IAM and SIAM are basically identity is identity. It doesn't matter if it's customer, vendor, internal, robot, doesn't matter. It's an identity. It needs to be managed the same way. And the reason I say that is if you look at the progression of customer and internal over the years, they've become more and more blurred. I mean, you would never think of exposing APIs to the customer base, right? Or to your consumers and allowing them to come into your infrastructure. Having things like lifecycle management, password management, multi-factor, all those things that was notoriously a workforce mentality is now also things that we need to look at from a customer perspective. So, but we also have to consider where's identity going and what's the future of identity. And, in my opinion, the future of identity, this is a little controversial, but the future of identity, in my opinion, is the separation of identity management and access management. And the reason that is that as organizations have to start managing more and more identity types, it becomes very complicated, right? And when I mean complicated, it's not necessarily around processes, it's around regulatory needs. Worrying about things like PII. So how do I alleviate that as a risk? Well, I push the identity back to the user. I say, well, we can use third-party IDPs. Let's allow them to federate or to access our environment through those. You manage your identity. You let me know what attributes you want to share with me, and then I'll build policies and procedures around that to give you access. right? So that's where I see identity going, and that's why I think unifying identity is really key and really the first step into be able to do those steps.
So, okay, this is gonna be fun. Because look, and I'm not like I see advantages to both, and so I'm always curious. So when you unify them, the part that gives me heartburn when I think about unifying them is the fact that customer identity, there's so much more regulation, especially related to PII and things I have to do for customer identity than I have to do for workforce.
Right now.
Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
I think I know where you're going there. So true. Right now it is. Okay. So then the second part of that becomes what happens when, so let's say I've got them combined and what you're doing is you're letting right now a controlled source being your customer's identity, right? So you don't control that identity, you don't control that source. They're bringing their identity, whatever they want to do, right? So whatever their bad habits are, and not saying that your workforce is going to be better than consumers, but for the most part, you would think the overall using of systems, the level's a little bit higher on your workforce because they're at work and you can get them all this training and stuff like that or whatever. So if I get a compromise on my customer identity, right, that then compromises my internal identity store, I've not only risked my customers, I've also risked my internal workforce. Whereas, usually I can kind of have them separate. So that's one of the things that kind of gives me a little bit of heartburn. I'm like, yeah, I would probably kind of separate the two. But I want to dive into to your point about as of right now, like same regulations. So I feel like you think there's some changes coming there.
Well, I mean, let's just look at GDPR, right? The right to forget, right? That doesn't matter if you're a customer, if you're or an internal workforce person, right? Let's look at places like France and Germany. What are they doing? You have to get approval for every attribute that goes through a system. So it's going to happen here. We're already getting our own regulations with California and New York, and there's federal ones coming. So, we have to look at, like it's a global market, right? We can't just think about, hey, I'm in Georgia or I'm in Texas. Let's just look at this. We need to look at the rest of the world. And if we want to be an organization that's supporting customers across the globe, we need to be able to support that. And at the same time, customers expect that. I go to Amazon, I go wherever, I have expectations of what that's going to be like, right? And if it doesn't matter if I'm going to Ford or if I'm going to Amazon or I'm going to SecureITSource, I have the same expectations, and it needs to be across the board. And that's the customer side, but users have the same expectation. Why should it be more difficult for me? Why should there be more friction for me to do my job than going onto a website and doing whatever I need to? So it's the same concept. I don't see much of a difference.
I'm in agreement that the concepts and the things that you need to do to secure them are very similar, right? And it's one of the arguments I had, years ago when I was looking at it. I was like, look, the same thing that we do for governance, all these workflows, all this stuff or whatever. I was like, that's literally the same thing. It's just said differently on the customer side, right? So like, to me, right to be forgotten is the big red button in LC and provisioning, right? It's termination, right? So my employee says, put in my resignation, I'm done. It's like, okay, great. Then I'm going to automate this workflow and disconnect you from all the applications and move your account. Like that's right to be forgotten on the customer side. It's just initiated by the user instead of, the administrator.
I guess the question back to you is, well, what happens if let's take a university as an example, right? And then I'll bring it into kind of a customer base. But if you're at a university, you could be an applicant, you can be a prospect student. It's basically the same thing. You can be a student,
right?
You can be alumni, you can be staff, you can be faculty, you can be professor, you can be whatever. You can be a million different things.
Right.
The same thing applies on the customer side. If you work, Amazon, good example, you can work there and you can be a customer, right? So why should that identity be different? It's just be what am I trying to do and what access should I get, right? Based on what I'm trying to do. So again, everything we do needs to be audited, right? And just because you have two different profiles doesn't mean that it's not the same person. And I think it's very key, especially if you are working for the same company and a customer, to be able to identify what that person's doing.
Right. And that, and that's solid point. You've moved me even from over to the consolidated because it is a point of, the difference between like knowing who you are and who that person is, which should be, to your point, no matter what role or profile or whatever persona, however many ways you want to say role,
Yeah.
that I'm trying to fulfill. At the end of the day, I'm still the same person. And so now, what access I have or what I'm allowed to do is a different step, right? That's the next part of the sentence. Like I'm
That's that
David.
policies and procedures I was talking about.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. You might have persuaded me over.
All right.
I think I might be on the consolidation side.
Now, if we can get the rest of the world to follow suit, we're in good shape. Yeah.
But it goes kind of back to, because as I'm thinking about that now, like if you truly are consolidated, right? Now you bet like this really does start to become, you can drive like those revenue generating questions. Because now, I mean, like now it's like, look, we've got one identity, we do this really well. So it doesn't matter if you're a customer, user, partner, employee, contractor, boom, like we know you are, we've got your identity, and here's the services that we can kind of build and offer, the type of
Right.
thing we can do. We've got a lot more flexibility in here. It does put a lot more onus on, this kind of goes to the other theory between the identity management and access management. Now it puts a whole lot more onus on the access management of like, okay, I brought them in, right? And it's one identity, right? But I need you to know, system, that this is David and he's a partner, right? Or he's accessing this as a partner, or this is David, he's actually accessing as an employee. Like now I need to be able to know that context. And that pushes a lot towards, what I'm storing from the attribute perspective, what I'm using either in runtime decisions or access management decisions, whatever, that's dive into all those architectures. So while it simplifies it on there, and I'm not going to say it makes it more complex on the access management side, I think it just puts more onus on it, because we do a lot of this stuff now, right? It just, now it's one of those things where this is your, as people talk about identity and perimeter, right? This is now like your main front door. Like, so if I'm not doing these checks right, if my policies are wrong, like, and I give David partner access when he should have had, employee access, he's getting a little bit.
Well, I think that's where some of the, obviously it's very easy to go down that path and be like, yeah, that's very risky, right?
Right.
And I think we forget about things like identity proofing, right? How do we implement identity proofing into this? We've kind of skipped that. We've gone from 0 to inside of my environment, but there's steps outside of that, right?
Yep.
Identity proofing, and the aspects that aren't appealing to organizations, even people, is capturing a lot of data, right? And learning about that data. So it's that struggle of how much AI do I want to use? How much data do I want to capture? It's a balancing act, right? And that's why maybe it's not 100% together at this point, but over time it will get to that place. I mean, we've gone from a cashless society to a credit card society because we want to be able to do everything very easily, right? We want reduced friction, and that's where everything is going. So yes, there's going to be some bumps in the road. There's going to be some things that aren't fun and that people don't like, but it's where things are going. And not every organization is going to bite off on it initially, just like SaaS. But the organizations that want to be leaders and really want to drive their business ahead of others are going to be doing this. And we look at the work from home strategy. Just with everything going on, organizations that were prepared for this are benefiting. Right, they're blowing their competition out of the water.
Yeah,
and it's the same thing in this area.
Yeah, and I've seen the stories, right? I've seen the horror stories of the transition, and I've seen some of the success stories of that transition. And it was, as somebody who's like lived in the trenches and just kind of understands all this. I remember when everybody was moving, to go to work from home, or whatever. And in my head, I just thought, I was like, there's an IT admin somewhere who's looking at this and laughing at home, going, "Hey, remember all those times I told you we need to stress test our VPN?" Yep. And you kept telling me, "Nah, we can wait." Well,
we had a customer go from basically 5% to 80% overnight.
Oh yeah.
Right. I mean, and that's just one customer. I mean, there's obviously a lot more like that. I mean, there's a lot of companies that basically had to roll into a solution because their VPN wasn't able to meet the needs. It wasn't stress tested. And, people, number one, it's a lot of technical knowledge. Let's be honest. I mean, we don't think it is because we do it all the time.
Right.
But, hey, someone in accounts payable who's never worked from home, who's never had a work computer outside, now has to figure out how to get into Citrix. You're kidding me. It's not happening. right? So do they download the right version? I mean, there's all kinds of things you do. So it was a mess.
Yeah. Do they have the right, like if they're doing hard token MFA, right? Like they gave me this thing when I first started, like 4 years ago. I don't know where it is. I think my kid has it. Like I don't like, what does this thing do? Like it was that. It's if any time where we could like wave our flag of how important all the stuff that we do is, it was then, right? It's like, hey, like this is the stuff, this is what we've been talking about, right? This is why this is important, and how we can enable business and things of that nature. And I think, for the most part, we've learned it in companies that transitioned over. And now what I'm excited to see is that, and why I was excited to have this discussion, is that now people are like, they're stepping back and looking and going, wait a minute, like we really can do stuff differently. Like, why not have a 90+% remote workforce? Why not do some of these things? So you start to, you start to push the boundaries of what you thought was, it just had to be this way before. Now you're realizing, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, right? And so I think if anything that's gotten a push, right, is going to be zero trust, because now we're starting to realize it's like, all right, well, we really can make, identity perimeter and start kind of doing some of these things. It's like, okay, log in from wherever. Like, we really don't care, because like you're never going to log in from the network. Let's just be honest. 2020, you're never going to log in from our home network ever again, because nobody went into the office. So throw that out. Like, I've got to start looking at all these different ways of how I, authenticate you and give you different access and things of that nature.
Well, and users don't care. They don't care if it's on-prem, it's hosted in a cloud, SaaS, microservices. They don't even care if it's eventually going to be blockchain. They don't care at all, right? So, the reality is they just need access to it. They don't want to go through. It doesn't make sense to have to go through a network that's go to the cloud when I can go right to the cloud, or I can go right to a SaaS solution. It just doesn't make sense. It adds more friction. It causes more problems. Now you add more weak points into the whole mix, and it's a mess. So, I agree, man. It's this is where we see things going, and customers. You mentioned how organizations are starting to think, hey, we don't need to be 100% on-prem anymore, like people. It's really the workforce that's driving it. They got a taste. They got their little blood in the mouth, and they're like, hey, you know what? I'm going to start looking for a job that allows me to work from home, and that's everything's changing. So yeah.
I mean, it's definitely gonna. I've had some conversation. People ask me, like, do you think we'll be like 100% workforce? And I'm like, I don't think it'll be 100%, right? Because we have to understand, like, some families just aren't set up for it, right? Like, if I got a buddy of mine who's got like 5 kids. Like, I'm like, going to work with his sanity.
Like get out of here.
3 hours, right? So I mean, there's definitely that aspect of it. Obviously, like, the current situation makes it a little harder because everybody's home. But I do think, like, remote work, even things that we're seeing. So go back to universities, right? Remote learning now, right? That's a thing now. I mean, it always was, but I mean, some big universities have already come out and said, like, we're not having any classes. Everything's going to be remote. So I definitely think, like, now is the time to, really push those, those kind of crazy thoughts that we would be labeled at years ago. It's like, hey, now's the time, because we have to. And so I want to transition to this, right? I know we've kind of talked about a lot, but for people who are watching or maybe going to listen later, like, what's some of the things when they say, look, okay, this is awesome. I agree that we should think about identity a little bit differently. What are some of the things I can do, like, today, if I want to start in my organization saying, how can I start looking at monetizing identity? Like, what are some steps that they can kind of take today to start, going down that path?
Yeah, I think you need to understand where you're making money as an organization, and how your department supports that, right? And it's, I think it was the Unicorn Project that it was all. I'm sure everybody's read that book, but it's all about finding those bottlenecks, right? And I think that it's kind of the same aspect here. Is where are our bottlenecks? How are we not able to provide those services faster to our customer? Do you even know who your customer is? That's a big question. I think a lot of times in IT, we just get into the world of I'm just doing this, and not really looking at the customer. So that's really the first step, is identifying where's your money coming in, and how do I support that? It's a difficult thing to do, but that's where I start. And then how do I speed that up? How do I speed that process up? what are my customers looking for from me? What do they want? And again, customers can be internal, they can be consumers, they can be whatever.
Right.
How do I do that? And yeah, I guess it's really kind of the emphasis is really kind of understanding where to start, right? Is understanding where does my money come in?
Absolutely. And then I want to highlight something real quick for everybody, listening and watching. Like, notice that Jonathan didn't say, go buy X or go do this or go talk to this person, right? I think again, I'll harp on this, like with especially with identity, as my picture falls in the
That
background.
was amazing.
It's that type of day. It's that type of day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Falls down the rim. Live on camera. So it's all about understanding, like, first of all, like, where does the business make money? Where do I tie into the business, and how can I start to map my goals and things I'm doing back to that, right? And even going back to like your identity management deployments, like we talked about, like you don't have executive buy-in, like all these things happen because you're not mapping your objectives back to the business. Because if the business doesn't understand why it's doing this, and then also you're not understanding the needs of those business users, it's not gonna go very far. So
Yeah. And not to interrupt you, but I mean, we always say if it's not tied to a business objective, it's noise, right? It's not tied to revenue, it's noise. They're nice to haves, but they're not beneficial to the organization. Hey, at some point maybe you can do them, but why? Why waste the time and effort?
Exactly. Right. Um, Especially in business, it's times like this when stuff gets tight. You look at like what is bringing in, like what do I need to do to make sure that the lights stay on, right? And if I can tie something to it, then it's going to stay around, right? So awesome there. So I want to shift gears a little bit and kind of give you a chance to talk a little bit about SecureITSource, who you guys are, and kind of some of the things that you guys do and offer to different customers.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. So, like I mentioned in the beginning, we're an identity only professional service organization. So, we resell and implement identity solutions. So, it's really important for us to mention that, we don't have any other revenue streams. A lot of organizations do. And I think what differentiates us is that we're hyper focused in it, and we do it really well. We've got a great team that is capable in a lot of different aspects. I think, you and I were talking about kind of some of our things that make us, differentiate us. And I always like to talk about the fact that, we've had zero change requests as an organization. Whenever we have our SOW based projects,
Right.
And, very low turnover, less than 5% since our inception. So, it's important to us how we build our culture. And that resonates with the customer, right? You're getting consistency, and you're getting quality people. So, as a services offering, like I mentioned, we do assessments, design, and implementation of our partner community.
Yeah, and I want to highlight something, right? For those of you who be watching and listening and don't know the lingo, like, so zero change requests. So first of all, let's explain what a change request is, right? So a change request happens when you say, okay, look, we're going to do a project, and you write out an SOW, statement of work, and say, here's all the things we're going to do, right? I'm going to go from step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And a change request comes when you say, hey, remember when I said I was going to do step 1, 2, 3, and 4? Well, I kind of need to do 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11, right? So we're going to come back and, submit another statement of how we're going to do the other steps. And of course, it's going to cost more money, right? And so I'm gonna piss off all my consulting friends out there right now, right? Like, because I'm gonna spill the beans. Like, hey, like when you're living in the world of consulting, like change requests, I mean, that's gold, right? Because you're like, oh, I came in, I'm gonna do this, but now I need to do this, so I'm gonna do this, and so you can just keep kind of hooking your customer along and along and along. So to have zero change requests, like when we talked about it earlier, I was like, wow, because that number one, that tells you one thing: when they scope a project, they're really good at, like, they know they're looking at something and going, it's going to take this much, right? So to have zero change requests means their estimate and what they looked at is pretty dang near close, if not exact, to what exactly needs to happen. Because otherwise, they'd have to come in and say, oh, we got to do these other things, right? So they're really good at scoping, which is something that you want. But also, like, they've stuck to it, right? A lot of times, that's what that tells me. Like a lot of times you kind of get like, oh, well, we could probably do this project, but what if we just leave out step 3 and 5 and then we'll just submit this and say, yeah, we'll do it for that. And then we'll just, when it comes up to it, we'll go, well, yeah, you can do 3 and 5 and here's a change request, right? So that is, I wanted to take some time to really highlight that and explain it. That is phenomenal, man. And I applaud you guys for that. There you go. Right. That is
absolutely. I think we deserve it. It's worth that for sure. It's not easy, right? And it's about asking why a lot. I always joke around. It was like, if someone tells me a requirement, I'm going to ask you why 3 times, and chances are you can't get to the third why, right? It's always, well, we've always done it this way, or Bob told me this is how we do it, and why is that? And you have to be honest with customers, right? And we're not afraid to walk away from a customer and say, listen, we're not on the same page. We know that this is the right approach. We know that this is going to cost X amount of dollars. You only have budget for half that. This is what we can do for that, right? And you got to be honest, and that provides value long term. And we're not a huge company. We're not the big 4. We don't really strive to be that big. The reality is we want to build good relationships with our customers because, we like identity. We love identity. And what's really awesome? When identity works.
Yeah.
Well, you don't hear identity projects working too often.
Right.
We replace a lot and we fix a lot. And we like it when we can come in and fix projects because it's our bread and butter.
And you know what? Like as somebody who's made this their career, right? I always take offense to this because the numbers have gotten better, right? I mean, it used to be when I started, like 80% of these projects all failed. It was like, we're going to start this project 8 times out of 10, it's going to fail, right? Yeah. And we've gotten so much better. Like I don't, and I haven't seen any recent studies actually show what the numbers are. But the thing is, like, we don't, and I think this is just maybe in IT in general, like, we never talk about the successes. You know what I mean? We don't talk about them enough. Like, we want to talk about the failures because it's huge and we spend all this money, but we don't like to sit there and talk about the actual successes and how how well projects went. But I will say I've loved watching the maturation of this industry and how we've gotten better at doing that. And I'm the same way. Like, it's always cool to see when it works because what I love about it, I used to tell when friends would ask me, like, what do you do? And I'm just like, oh, like, all right, so when you have to go get access to something and you have to go submit it to a system and I was like, yeah, I work on the systems that do all this stuff in the back end. Like, oh, okay, cool. Like, it's going well when, like, your customer's end user base never says anything. Yep. Or they say, man, this was so easy to go get access. Like, oh yeah, just go. Like, when the users are actually leading other users to the system to go get access and manage everything, like, that's how you did it right. Instead of, I don't use that system. Look, just email Jonathan, tell him this, and this is how I do it. Like, no, we don't do any of that, right? Like,
yeah,
right when, like, users actually like using the system, because that means you've done the right things, like you're getting the right access, and you made all of the right connections to the applications. You've done the right things as far as, like, people showing up in the system at the right time. Yeah. It's awesome, man.
Well, you know how you get there? It's very easy. It's simple. I was an SAP consultant for a while. And one thing I learned from don't judge me. The one thing I learned about that was the fact that they did a really good job of organizational change management. And they were out a year before go live, talking to the users, understanding, communicating what needs to happen, putting posters on the walls, making it a big deal. That's what we need to do in our projects, right? We need to involve everybody. Whether or not you take their opinion on board, it's this thing. We always say, hey, I don't like change. Well, that's a lie. You do. Right. Have you got married? Have you had a kid? Did you go away to college? Did you move? I mean, there's everything we've done is a change, but what's the difference? The difference is we control that. Right. So if we make people feel as if they're in control or at least have an opinion, they feel like they're involved in it, and they're more willing to adapt to the changes coming. But at the same time, when they walk in on Monday, they need to know what's going to happen. It can't just be, hey, all of a sudden, here's a new IAM solution, go access everything, right? It's a process, and we're always about the technical piece, and we're always about, let's monetize identity, but someone's got to use this. Someone's got to be able to monetize it, right?
You know what? There's one customer, and I won't say the name. I'll just say it's a large shoe retailer. I can figure out who it is from there.
That's too easy. There's a million. out.
Correct. Yeah. The thing that I found so interesting when I was working with them is that they took that idea, everything they did was a launch plan. Like they literally, who's going to be like athlete for it? How are we going to put, like, they approached everything, every project, like it's a big, huge marketing event. We're going to do this thing, roll out. And I was like, when I first, I was like, this is kind of weird. Like we're like rolling out a server patch, like calm down, like it's going to be okay. But it was built into their DNA to do that. And because of that, it forced you to think of the questions like, okay, what's important? What are customers going to want to know about this? What are we going to get them excited about? What are they going to see? I had a chance, I had an opportunity to work with them for about a year, and I picked up a lot from that. Like I was like, you know what, this is something we do lack. We don't do enough of that, of building the excitement, letting them know what's coming, and getting that out there, because it's that user experience that one lets you know, yes, you can do all your metrics of, how many applications you connect to, what do you can do all that stuff or whatever. But if your users are reporting back like, hey man, I love this new system, I do this or whatever, that buys a lot of goodwill towards the program and things of that nature. So yeah, that's definitely something that yes, we could do a much better job of. And,
Yeah. Well, listen, what you just said is the advantage of working with a professional services organization, right? Because they get to learn from different industries, different verticals, different companies on how to do things right. And if they're a smart professional service organization, they'll adapt those things and they'll make you better because of it. So, listen, I understand wanting to do things yourself, and I'm a proponent of DIY, but the reality is that there's advantage of working with organizations like us.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I would I would tell people all the time, whether I was on the vendor side or consultant side, I'm like, the one thing that I felt like this statement needs a like comma and to was like, customer's always right. And I'm just like, yeah, but they like it's and I get this analogy all the time. It's like, if I'm going to a doctor, right, and I'm saying, hey doc, something's wrong with my knee, I'm going to go in and ask the doctor who went to medical school and studied this and does this all day, every day.
Right.
Can you look at my knee and kind of tell me what's wrong? I'm leaning on that doctor's expertise. Right now, the doctors wants my input, tell me what's going on. Like, hey, you know your body, I know medicine. Together, we can figure this thing out. I don't come in and go, hey doc, so look, I'm getting this knee pain. So here's what I'm going to want you to do. The scheduled surgery, I want you to do microscopic, and then assign me some Vicodin. We're going to be good. Like, I don't come in and tell the doctor like what's going on, right? Like, because I'm like, I would want the doctor to go, hey, Dave, come here. One of us went to med school, okay? So I want you to figure that out first, okay? One of us did. So how about you let that person kind of go through? And so that's the thing. Like I used to tell like a lot of young consultants, it's like, look, the customer is always right about their business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, about whatever they're asking you to come, consultant, like you're their subject matter expert. Like you're bringing that expertise. And so what you want to do is you want to partner with that customer, go, okay, look, explain to me about the business and how this works. And I'm going to bring the expertise of how this works. And together we can make this work. If I'm just, as a consultant, just listening to going, well, it should be this way. It's like, okay, well, I'm just going to go do it.
Yep.
They knew what was right. Like they wouldn't have hired you in the first place or bought the tools that you're trying to implement. So, one of the little, there you go, like any tidbits of how to become a great, professional service consultant, right? Customer's always right about their business. Always ask questions.
But it's about being a good person, right? And I know that sounds crazy. I mean, we've all read How to Make Friends in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Make Friends with People. The big thing you get out of that is being genuine, right? Yeah. Genuinely care about your customer. Obviously, you work for another company. Don't become the consultant that works for your customer, but be genuinely interested and want them to succeed. And if you do that, you're going to make mistakes, but the customer will see that you care about them, and they're going to look at you and they're going to say, you know what, I trust this person's opinion because they genuinely care. Absolutely. So that's consulting 101 in my opinion, is be a genuine person.
All right, so as we're coming to top of that, we're going to wrap up here. For everybody that's watching, like this is totally interactive. If you have questions, go ahead, leave comments. We'll see them here. I'll bring them up. We'll get to those questions. I do want to give this time to highlight. So there's Jonathan's written a great white paper about this, monetizing identity. I'll post a link out. You can get to the SecureITSource link download the white paper. I suggest you read it, give it a good read, and start having the conversation within your own organization. Obviously, always feel free to reach out to either myself or Jonathan, ask questions. We'd love to talk to you about it. But one of the things that I always like to kind of end these podcasts on, right, is I like to ask people, like, what do you want your legacy to be?
Well, my personal legacy, I'd say that I want to be a go-to person. I want people to think that no matter what the question was, that or whatever needed to happen, that I can go to John or Jonathan, whatever you want to call me today, and he'll get it done, and he'll care, right, and
Right.
he'll make it happen. So I guess my legacy is that I want people to think of me as a go-to person, no matter what.
That's awesome. That's a great legacy to have. I think one of the things that I found the best consultants, salespeople, are always the ones who care more about their customers, right, than anything else, right? And to your point about being genuine and authentic, that comes out, and people connect to that, people see that, and they trust, right? Which is, one of the things that I've always looked to gather with anybody, coworkers, peers, like get somebody to trust you, right? And that's just you do that just by being real and authentic. Don't hide anything, and you don't know anything you don't know, right? I used to tell people, it's like, I don't know all the answers, but I'll be the first one to tell you I don't know, but I'll go figure it out, right? Or hey, let's go figure it out together. Like, I don't know this answer. Sounds like something century, and let's go figure it out. So as we wrap up, let me post out, and I'll send this on this will actually be on the notes on the podcast episode, but also I'll send it out right now to the stream. The link to the white paper where you guys can go download that and check that out. It's a very good kind of overall. Oh, look at that! And David actually sent it to me. He was thinking about me. Um, Very good high level white paper about like how to start rethinking about identity in your organization, which is one of the things we really need to do. I'd like to see this kind of move forward for like this next kind of wave of identity. I've said it a couple of times. I feel like the identity industry is ripe for change, for disruption, if you will, to use the buzzword there, because we've been doing things a certain way for so long, and technology is caught up. We can do things a lot faster and better than we did before. The standards are actually starting to, number one, be standards, and people are actually starting to use them. Thank God, right? Wait for Skim.
Yeah, there you go.
OAuth 2 has done a lot of good things, and I hear they're looking at
All three.
Yeah, they're looking at coming up with another one, OAuth 3. So all good things that allows us to do a lot more things that we could do 5 years ago. So what I expect to come is we're going to see some new and exciting ways to do that. One thing that I would like to see, so everybody that's watching and listening, for God's sakes, like provisioning, seriously, like this should be automated by now. Like, why the hell are we in 2020 and we still have to make custom connectors? I don't get it. Like, literally, we should have figured this out a long time ago. But hopefully somebody will figure that out. Not me. I don't like to program anymore. So, but somebody smart out there is going to figure that out.
We do. We like to do that.
Okay, there you go. You guys will figure it out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let me grab this link, put it out there to everybody. Dave can figure out how to copy and paste. Nope, not today. Today's my Friday, man. I'm telling you, I'm done after this.
Good for you. I'm envious for sure.
Boom. So there you go. Posted the link out there. Check that out. Just public email just down the form. And with that, we're gonna wrap it up, man. This has been fun. Thanks for hanging out.
Man. Yeah, I appreciate it. So, I'm done too. I'm glad you didn't make fun of me drinking out of a college red cup.
Like, I thought about it, man, but I was like, you know what?
But
you know what? It's Thursday. It's quarantine. Why not? Like, in the red cup. Next, here, I'm gonna do this just for you. Next time, I'm gonna grab a red cup and then I'll drink out of the red cup.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. Keep it going.
All right, thanks, man. To everybody else, thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you. To the next cocktail, to the next conversation. You guys stay safe. Why are you guys still here? Hanging around. I see you. You guys want to hang out? You put something in the comments. Thanks for listening to Cocktails, Code, and Conversation. And join in C3 Live. Check us out, c3.onthecorner.us, brought to you by the On the Corner Podcast Network. Check us out, onthecorner.us, for more great podcasts talking about all kinds of subjects. Please sign up for the C3 Squad. You can get discounts on merch and get your own official shirt, just like this one. Also, hear about all the latest updates coming onto the podcast. The next cocktails, the next conversation. You guys stay safe.